I'm going to now jump into the mission creator for Project Apollo, and I'm going to hit create new mission. You don't need to use this button if you don't want to. Then I'm going to hit launch. I'm going to up it a couple of notches. Let's see. There we go. Maybe this is better. Cool. Alright, awesome. Thank you. So, if you select that thing, the mission editor loads up. And you're currently inside of the Apollo command module in the background here. So, close does not unload the mission that you have in here. This is just a basic template. It doesn't have much in it. But I'll just quickly show that. So if you now hit close, you can now get back to the cockpit and do your own things. And one of the things that you might want to do is to just hold the countdown. The default mission is in the 2-hour thing. So you will have 2 hours before the rocket will start lifting off. And I will of course fix this, but it was just one thing I noted yesterday, that when you use the create mission template,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes?
Okay, so when you close the mission editor and go into the cockpit and you hit switches, does that save into the mission?
No.
Okay.
The mission does not record anything. And I'll get back to a couple of those things and some of my plans for this, because right now recording switches is something that I made possible in the mission in the checklist editor, and this is also another thing that you can create yourself. But for example, I can go into the DC check here and I can hit edit, and it will load it into the editor. The editor of a checklist allows you to, in free text, type the entire checklist. Then you have the steps editor. And for example, when it comes to this checklist, maybe the first step is to set the RCS command to on. I then move this to up, and then I hit record, and you see that it records this step. Then the next step might be that you need to set the RCS transfer to on. I hit record, and it kind of stores this. And then I want a manual check saying that then maneuver to 000, for example. There we go, and that's now a manual check. And then you can hit save, and this will now become the run command for this checklist. So if you see that the run doesn't exist here, this is because this one didn't have any steps. But if you add steps to it and I hit save, the run will appear in this. But I'm not going to save this now because I don't want to roll this out because it's completely random. So I'm just going to hit X to close it down. So that's the system that I want to add in the mission editor, but right now it doesn't exist. If I now go back into the mission editor, you can see that the same mission is still loaded. I'm going to call this workshop mission. There we go. You can specify the launch date and time, and how many minutes before the scheduled launch time you will be loaded into the cockpit. For example, 1 hour before. And then retro time doesn't really do anything in Apollo. This is important in Mercury and somewhat important in Gemini, but the retro time is of course not calculated at the start of the mission directly. But of course you can have a plan. This doesn't affect the game much, but it could be part of your plan. The next thing you want to do is to create a short description. This mission will teach you how to set up a nice system. We will also learn how to create missions. Okay. Then you can select the launch vehicle. For Mercury, this drop-down has both Redstone and Atlas. In Gemini there's only one, and in Apollo currently there's only one, but I might, sometime in the future add, for example, the Saturn 1B. So that's also a thing to remember. And then you have the ballast. I'm I'm going to include the lunar module in this mission. This basically puts the lunar module inside of the S4B. Then you have the target inclination. I would recommend you to just leave this, but it will affect the guidance and the roll program. Once this is correctly programmed, this is something I plan to do for 0.8. But in the current version, it does try to hit that inclination. So there's when I created Gemini, I added a completely new azimuth and inclination guidance system into the entire ascent algorithms. So with some help from one of the test pilots, TP Lawrence, we kind of figure out how to use some of his calculations in Reentry to make this possible. So that's pretty cool. This affects the roll program. But right now, 28.91 will get you into an orbit where you can find the moon. So if you want to get on a moon mission, you should try to kind of hit the same inclination. But I need to double check this number because it might be lagging behind from something else. So let me just add this to my to-do list. I'm learning things as I go as well. There we go. And then you can specify the names of everyone on board. I could, for example, say that Victor is going to be the command module pilot, and then I'm going to set Thomas to the lunar module pilot. I'm going to get back into load state pretty soon. This is a method you can use to get into a state. Which means that you can load into, a state where you're already landed on the moon and the mission is all about doing ascent. You can create a state that allows you to already be in Earth orbit ready for TLI. This loads the entire state, the orbital mechanics, the states of the vectors, velocities, positions of everything, as well as your panel states for the command module and the lunar module. So this is what you will be using to kind of load into a state. The other thing is disable default voice. I've used this in a couple of test missions so far. It allows you to remove all the default sound effects that happens during the entire mission. There's not a lot of default sound effects right now, but every time you load into Apollo and you're loading into the pad state, which means that you're on Cape and setting the cockpit ready for launch. You will hear some background noise, for example, verifying program 2, and then once you run program 2, someone says, okay, program 2 running. And then you have enter verb 75, do not enter. That's kind of the default voice. You can remove this and replace these things with your own stuff based on the timeline of the mission. This allows you to extract sound effects from real mission audios and transcripts and stuff like that, or even create your own to add voice and sound effects to your mission.
Question?
Yeah.
So possibly when Vostok Mission Editor comes out, could you add custom things to the radio as you discussed yesterday via that menu?
Do you mean like radio stations and audio playing on the radio?
Yeah.
This will need to be a decoupled system, but any decoupled system has a spot in the mission editor. For example, if Vostok has a radio and I want to be able to use that radio from the mission editor or a part of a mission, then I can just add some commands, some tools for you, so you can directly include it in here. So this is fully possible, and if you guys have any features that you want to see in the Apollo mission editor, just let me know and I'll add them.
Alright, awesome.
We do have some default states. You can, for example, say that I want to load the mission with a cold and dark state, for example, or a custom one. Then you can provide a file name for a state that you've saved yourself. But I'll leave this one as off. I just use the default ingress state for both the command module and the lunar module. Random failures is now added to Apollo, but it doesn't have any failures yet. But if you take a look at Mercury, you have a lot of failures. So if you want the mission to be shielded from random failures that suddenly happens and disrupts your mission flow, which is something that you usually want, because when you create a mission, you want the mission to kind of follow the intent that you had. Then you can make sure that this one is checked off, and this is something that's default behavior. But if you do want to add random failures to a mission, for example, when creating a free play mission or some things like that, you can use the allow random failures. Override sun phase allows you to set the sun phase yourself. It will still follow the rotation of the real sun in terms of time, but it has an offset to that, which means that you can then say that, okay, in this mission I want to load into the moon, I don't want to spend too much time with the time and day thing, there's some bugs involved in that too, so I'm just going to override the sun phase and set it to, for example, 90 degrees on mission load, and then you test it, you see that, okay, 90 degrees is pretty good, or okay, maybe I need 60 degrees to get proper illumination on the lunar surface. So you can just override this, and this is degrees, so between 0 and 360 degrees. When it comes to weather, this is actually something I've been thinking about. Weather, for example, during landing or even takeoff, it would be cool. And I was also thinking about ways of getting the real meter readings from a location where you're landing or taking off from, and then you can apply effects on that, or even maybe scrubbing stuff. I don't know, but it does make sense, and I think it would be a cool feature. But of course, not for now. I've bigger things to solve before getting into that phase. So that's a very quick explanation of this entire front page of the mission. This is what you will see when you select the mission on the main menu. And then it has an ID. It's randomly generated, so you don't need to worry too much about it. Then you have the briefing page, and this is what you see on the mission pad. This is where you can give instructions to the player who wants to play your mission. It can be an introduction, it could be ingress, it could be anything.
Ask a question?
Yes.
Someone just asked in the chat in Twitch. Will there be realistic weather issues based on the mission?
Yeah, this was one of those things that I just mentioned. It was having realistic weather included. It's something that I wish to do, but not right now. But it does make sense to have realistic weather during pad liftoff or landing somewhere. I can always look up the weather report using meter to figure out what the weather are like on the current location, and maybe even wave size when you're landing in the ocean. And then the procedural wave generator or the ocean system is able to pick this up and then kind of recreate the weather in terms of ocean, and then a weather system that could draw clouds and stuff like that. The entire landing phase is just kind of a temporary thing that I want to improve at one time, and even add helicopters and stuff like that. And then, yeah.
The only reason that question was posed was Apollo 12 lightning strike.
Yeah, yeah. It could be made.
Okay, and someone else asked, is the abort mode from Launchpad implemented? Because if you do this in Gemini, everything breaks. If nothing explodes, you get spawned over the ocean.
Alright, that sounds like a bug, so we'll need to dive into that. Abort mode is implemented in Mercury and Gemini, and the last time I checked it did work, but Apollo does not have this. But this is planned for version 0.8. Then I'll dive into having some abort modes, especially the bigger ones, and then add this as ways to trigger things in this mission editor. You can trigger aborts in Mercury and Gemini now using the mission editor. Okay, so when it comes to the briefing page, this is where you can type things. For example, in this mission we will do this. Schedule, launch time, something, and then mission, or flight plan 1, 2. You kind of try to describe the flow of the mission. And what I like to do here is that even though that I want to add a failure somewhere between step 1 and step 2 in the flight plan, I could still describe the entire original flight plan in the briefing, because that's the intent of the mission, even if something wrong happens when you're in space. And this is a cool method that you can use to kind of trick the player into kind of knowing that, or thinking that they know the direction your mission is going to take them, but suddenly, you know, everything turns around and your fuel cell breaks somewhere here, for example, in your timeline, which kind of makes step number 3 redundant, and you get into an emergency mode instead of the normal flow. So you can
basically what you could do is have a mission that you plan, and then something randomly breaks, and
yeah, that's
Apollo 13.
Yeah, that's fully possible, and you can time and plan all of these, or you can decide as a mission designer, you can design when these issues will happen and surprise the players by doing so. I'm going to go into the timeline last, but I'm going to go into goals first. So I think that for this mission, I only have one goal, and that's splashdown. That's it. You can select a couple of goals here, but I'm going to add more things as well. Another way of completing a mission, so you can have one goal, is using the timeline. You can say that if the player reaches a certain spot, then complete the mission, and that will also complete the mission outside of these goals. And then, lastly, I'm also going to save this. I'm going to save this as a workshop mission. And I'm going to hit save. And this now saves the workshop mission into the Apollo custom missions folder. You can also save this into a campaign folder if you want to, but the most normal thing to use is the absolute path, because then you can specify a direct path on your computer that loads and saves the missions directly. So this is what I'm usually always using, the absolute path, and this is a new feature that I added last year. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the timeline aspects of things. So the timeline is what defines your entire mission. It's kind of the flow that you will need to kind of you guiding the players through your mission using this. And every mission is very sequential. There's not easy to, yet at least in this system, to branch out into a lot of different stories based on the events that happens on board. You will need to kind of design that story. For example, you can see the academies, it has this timeline that you need to follow to complete the mission. The same applies for all of those campaign missions. You follow a timeline and you need to do stuff to be able to complete that timeline. And that's how you need to design the missions as well. What you do is that you first add a sequence into the timeline. If you then add, I'm just checking the chat here quickly. Yeah, if you add a part to the timeline, you will need to specify what time this event will happen. Let's say that I want this to happen 10 seconds after loading the mission. Then you can set this. This is the mission elapsed time. But before ignition, this is time since you loaded the mission, time since you entered the capsule. So this is how you can track where you are. But this time isn't a one-to-one mapping based on how the mission unfolds. So usually you don't really need to use this timestamp directly unless you know exactly when you want to do something. So the entire mission sequence is that this event will first happen, and once this event is completed, the next event will happen, and then a third event, and then you will go through the timeline of the mission that you design in that method. This is something I of course wish to redo after version 1.0. I was actually thinking of asking you, Thomas, if you want to meet up one time and then kind of figure out a good way to do this using your knowledge in making mission editors from other projects. So I think that would be cool.
We can do that.
Yeah, awesome. But right now we just need to kind of stay within these constraints of how the sequential mission actually works. So for example, the first thing that happens is that for the mission control is saying, hello, how are you today? There we go. You can add a lot of flags, and I'm going to share a list with all of them. For example, if you do something like this, profile name, or capsule name, it will automatically detect these things in the mission string and then fill this in with the name that you set on your profile or your capsule name. There's other things such as co-pilot name or CMP, things like that you can use. So I'm going to share the list of all of these keywords that you can use to kind of build up a more dynamic sentence. It also has AP, for example, I think, which will print out your current apogee in the message. There's a lot of those things. Every single mission sequence or timestamp or whatever you can call them has a couple of values. And you can show these values using these visibility flags. This doesn't mean that I want to have a condition. It just means that, can you show me the condition of this message? And currently the default condition is that you are sending a message to the player. And the message is, hello, how are you today? You can add a sound effect to any message if you want. So you can hit play sound effects, and then the relative path to the OGG file that contains that sound effect. So you can basically add your own explosion sound effects if you want to trigger an explosion suddenly, or mission control saying something, or you can even record you saying these things and apply some radio effects to it and create your own messages based on what happens in the mission. So you can be very creative with this. It can be anything you want, really. And then it also has some values, which are just default values that you can use, and I'll get back to that. So, after 10 seconds, I'm going to send a message. The duration of this message is 6 seconds. Then it's going to show you this, and it's going to send you this message. And then you can hit Roger in the mission to proceed. But the next message will happen at this point, or when it's done saying this other message. If, for example, this one is 11 seconds, then the message, and this is kind of good to know, the first message here will be sent 10 seconds after load. It's going to last for 6 seconds, just to give the player some time to read the message. And then if you say that at 11 seconds, then I want to send another message that's also going to last for 6 seconds, then this doesn't really match. So you don't need to care too much about it, because I tried to make a system that automatically handles it. What this now does is that once this message has been sent out after 10 seconds, it's been lasting for 6 seconds, then it will say that this event is now complete. What's the next event? Okay, the next event was supposed to be at 11, but then this message wasn't yet complete. Okay, well then I'm just immediately going to proceed to this message instead. So it sounds kind of complicated, but once you start doing these things, it's very easy to actually do this. I made hundreds of missions for Reentry already using these tools, so you kind of get familiar with it, but it's kind of weird initially. But hopefully, of course, maybe at a later stage, as mentioned, I might want to redesign this entire mission editor, or have another one that can work side by side. I don't know how to do that, but we'll see. I need to figure it out. So then the commander can reply, I'm fine. Fine. How are you? Do you read me? Alright. And then I'm going to just leave this at 25, and then the pilot can, for example, say, let's get this cockpit set up. Can you push switch X to up, for example? Then you can use the condition here, and remember, this is not enable or disable a condition. The condition is always there, but it just
I ask a
shows the
question?
list. Yes.
Someone in the chat just asked, can you set variable flags, or flags and base logic on them?
You can do it to some degree. The values are used by these conditions, and then you can use the values to specify kind of how that condition will work. I did have branching in missions before, but I deprecated it because I want to kind of move into a new flow of designing these missions. But I'll get back to kind of how you can use this. You can say, for example, in here, set the switch to string 1, and then you can specify what string 1 is here, and you will be able to put this inside of this message directly, for example.
So could I, for example, tell the player to move a switch and then send the next message when that switch is flipped?
Yes. So now the condition is that can you push switch X to up? Then you can go in here and say that we are now in the command module. And we're in the cockpit. So there's a huge list of categories of conditions that you can apply to your mission flow. And you can, in general, for example, you can say that message, or you have another type of message. The message condition is the default one, but you have another one saying that message wait for Roger to proceed. If you do that, you can then the mission won't proceed until you press Roger. At that point, you will receive the next message instead. There's a couple of other ones here. So if I now go back into the command module cockpit section, you can see that you have a lot of sub things. You can ask the player to execute a specific checklist using the run feature. You can set a pin for the player if you want to by using the CM set pin ID to pin position. Then when this message is received, this switch will then be set. And this is something I'm testing out, which allows your crew to set switches for you so you don't have to press them yourself, for example.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
Would this be multiplayer, I assume? Or is this single player and an AI would do it?
This is single player now. I do wish to add multiplayer when it comes to Gemini and the Apollo spacecraft, because it requires more people to operate it. But that's not in the plan right now, because now I'm working on the basics of multiplayer, which you can see in the Mercury Control Center. So the Mercury Control Center can ask you to flip switches and stuff like that too.
So if you are in a crew module that has more than one person, that let's say I'm playing single player, when you set those up, it will automatically do the switches and all that automatically, and then acknowledge it.
Yes, potentially yes. So if I now, for example, say that this message asks you to flip a switch, then I'm going to do check pin, and the pin that I want is, for example, I'm going to scroll down. I see that I need to change the order of the cursor. It's behind stuff. This cursor is something I recently added. And this is where it comes to handy, that record feature, because what you could do now is just hit record, and then you can do it in, just close the editor, click the switch, and it will be automatically applied.
Just like just search for the button. That would be handy too.
Yeah.
Like in general, searching like pressing Control F maybe, and then looking for the name of a button. That would be very, very handy.
Yeah, I've actually started to create the functionality to do a search. That's going to be the first thing that I want to do when it comes to this list. But it will take a little bit of time. So for example, I want the player to press the, let's see, it doesn't really matter, but optics mode, for example. and I want to set the optics mode to up. Then, if I now add a new sequence to this mission, this will not care about when this message is ideally supposed to be delivered to you. It will be delivered when you're done with the previous step. So at this point, you can say that, okay, switch flipped to up. Because this condition is, then the logic will now wait for this condition to happen. And I can now hide it, and you can see that it has a special flag there saying that this condition is a check pin thing, so you can easily kind of find this in the list as you make the mission. And then you can proceed with this and say that Roger, we see the data, this is just something random. And then I'm gonna hit save here. And it's always good to, especially initially when you're trying to learn things, to go in and try and play this mission. So I'm working on this save and run feature, but I don't think it works properly right now. So I'm just gonna make sure I saved, and then I'm gonna close. I think that it does work on custom missions, but not on campaign missions. So something like that.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there a logic feature where you can, like, say, send this message if the AGC is running this program?
So what you would do to be able to... can you remind me to get back to that soon? Let's add that logic into our mission. But first, I just want to go and test this.
Yes.
So custom missions, and then we had workshop mission. Then you can see the mission is incomplete, the name of the mission, and then the description that we specified in the editor. And then you can hit launch, and it should be able to launch this up.
So I have a question on this game in general.
Yeah.
Is this only going to cover Mercury to Apollo, or will it cover Russian?
Vostok has been confirmed.
Vostok, okay. Space shuttle, SLS, SpaceX maybe, or is that?
So anything SpaceX, it's private. So I don't have the license. I did see a tweet from Elon answering some other people that wanted to make stuff based on SpaceX, and he said that. And his reply was, "I will probably not sue you if you make a SpaceX-related game, but that's not good enough for me. I don't want to take any risks when it comes to that." I do have I've been talking with NASA on licensing, and I've kind of gotten approved a lot of the things that I wanted to get approved. So that's why you only see Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo, the command module and the lunar module in Reentry. But of course, Vostok is also on the way. It's more than 50 years old.
Licensing for Vostok?
So Vostok is a different question, and I'm kind of looking into how all of this kind of works. But I'm not going to go into the details on that specific matter. It's something that also time has a saying here, and then the entire USSR, it became something else in the 90s, stuff like that. So there's a very complex equation here.
So Space Shuttle would be a no comment, or maybe?
Space Shuttle is something that I really want to do. So it's I've always said this, and I've been very open about it, saying that I do want to have Space Shuttle, but I want to first focus on getting this up to a very playable state, where the major systems are working and that we don't have any big blockers. So with the entire TSS thing that I'd spent the entire last year on creating out of the way, I can now finally get back into focusing on some of these systems. You saw the optics were added in this update, but it was actually scheduled for 0.8. I just decided to spend some dead time when things were in testing to add optics. So the Space Shuttle is not out of the question, but I cannot confirm it yet.
Good enough for me.
It's a dream of mine to be able to make it, but I'm not there yet. Alright, so now I'm in the mission, and you can see that MCC sends me a message. "Hello, how are you today?" and I've spawned into the cockpit 60 minutes before the liftoff time, as I said, and the date and time is also correct. And I can hit now Roger. I'm fine. How are you? Do you read me? And then Roger. Then the Victor, who we then specify the name of the CMP, he says, let's get this cockpit set up. Can you push switch X to up? Then you remember I asked you to put the optic switch up on panel 1 to 2. Then you can automatically see that this is now parsed by the checklist helper system to show you where it is. You get this blue thing that shows you where the switch is, and you can just go and find it. And it needs to be set to up. And you can see that I haven't yet received a new instruction because the condition is that you need to complete this to be able to proceed with the mission. And then you can hit up, and you can see that this becomes green, and the next message is received. Then Roger, okay, switch flip to up. Roger, we see the data. And that's our very, very simple mission for now.
Amazing.
It's very simple tools, but and you need to be very specific, but it does work. So I think that I named the mission workshop mission, and then I hit load. Alright, and then you can see that it now loaded into the mission again. I can close the mission editor and say that I want to halt the countdown.
Petri, can you show us how to load into orbit?
Yes, I will do that next, but first I'm going to get back to your question. You said that you wanted to proceed a mission if the AGC is running.
Yeah.
Run
Search program or noun. Yeah.
program 1 on the AGC, for example. Then you can go in here, and this is also part of the cockpit checks. You can say that you want to proceed if the AGC is running value 1 mission. And now it's going to show program ID down here, and we wanted the ID to be 01, but this can also be 1 because this will be parsed. What this in fact is value 1 has now been set to 1. So there's a direct tie between this. So what this is actually doing is that check if AGC is running value 1 program. Then value 1 is 1, which means that this will proceed when program 1 is detected on the AGC. It's just that I try to reduce the usage of these values into focused things for each of the cards. You can call these mission cards, actually. I think that makes sense. I actually call it that in the code. So for every card in your mission, it has this condition, and each condition or card has these values, and you can use this to build up the logic. So now it's asking you to proceed if program 1 is running, and then you can see program 1.
So in the future, would this be expanded? So you could, for example, say if this memory location is that value, continue, so people can set certain values.
Yes, that's fully possible to expand this with. Yes, I can easily maybe even create a category for the AGC and the LGC in this list, and add features that you guys need. So when you are creating missions, let me know what you need, and we'll figure it out.
That's awesome. Thanks.
There are quite a lot of conditions, as you can see. This was only the cockpit, but you can also go into the spacecraft itself. When stage 1C is separated, when stage 2 is separated, continue the mission. When .05G has been detected, if you're in a high drag zone, if tower jettison ascent is complete, if the hatch is open, if any engines is burning. Then you have the same for the SPS, if the SPS engine is on or off, and then you can kind of create logic based on that. And all of the missions of Reentry is open source. You can download the GitHub repo with all of the missions in Reentry, load them into the editor, and play around and see how I built this. This is probably the best way to learn kind of the more advanced steps of this.
Could you possibly like rename the conditions and such to a more human readable format and make a search function for it sometime?
Yes, this is now using the code name for this. So it's not very intuitive. But I tried to name these things so you can at least read them. But of course, I do have for each and every one of these a display name, so I could open source that. And the same applies for all of these switches. So you notice that every time you run a checklist, then some of the switches are well behaved. I can hit run. You can see switch underscore p3 underscore AC bus 2 reset. This does not exist in the dictionary. It does exist, but no one has specified what it actually is. But then some of the other ones are a little bit nicer, and it has a friendly name. So
Okay.
I'm planning on doing something similar for this one as well. I just didn't want to do it before I know exactly what I want, as in the base package of the mission editor. But as you saw, I jumped out of the mission editor right now, and I'm maybe even just playing my mission. And then suddenly, I want to make change. Then you can just jump out, open up the mission again, and you can start playing around. So the mission is not unloaded until you load a new mission.
Okay, that's good. Yes.
Another question.
Yeah.
Will it be able at some point that you can, like, when you make a custom cutscene, like with
Oh, yes.
I don't know why, if you can like add that, like add a video file that is played at a certain time.
I
So
was.
then have like something like cutscenes, self-made cutscenes.
It's a very good idea. I like it because it's going to be hard to allow people to create their own real-time cutscenes, because then I will need to create a game engine. But having videos would make sense. Then you can create
Yeah.
whatever videos you want using public domain images from NASA, whatever, your own stuff, and create videos. And then you can say that when this mission is loaded, I want to have a cutscene. The cutscene file name is this. Alright, let's play this video first, and then if the player hits escape or the video finishes, then load the mission. But
Yeah, that would
mission.
also allow for like mission intros. with,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
playlists.
That's a very good idea. I'm gonna take a note of that. Using a real pen, since both of my computers are busy streaming.
Ooh.
All right.
Probably may actually make a 3D animation of that too.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good solution.
Yeah, maybe you can like record some in-game footage and put this together into a video and then make it as a cutscene.
Definitely.
Heck
Yeah, I like it. Very good ideas. This is why I like to include the community. Awesome stuff. So I just want to quickly show you how to load into orbit. And the quickest way is, the way that I usually do it is to start creating a mission. I'm on the pad. I configure the panels to where I want to configure it. If I want the mission to be a lunar mission, then I can either just go into free play, load it into free play on the pad, for example, then launch it, do not TLI, a quick load into the orbit that I want to do, or I can load into any state from any other mission. It could be the Academy. If you like one of the states in the Academy, you can create your own state using just the save state at any time, and then use this for the mission. So right now, for example, I loaded into the CSM in orbit state. And this is just a free play mission that comes out of the box. But the state is just a state. It's a snapshot of time during a mission, and it just saves everything, all the position of the switches, and executes the same logic that you use to get into that state. So for example, if I now hit F1, you can see that I'm currently in orbit around Earth, and I'm at some location. I could timescale this into kind of twilight. There we go. And I think that this is going to be a nice state for my mission. I want to, just be able to see the sunset in this mission, and then I want this mission to be focused around using the optics, for example, in an optics academy lesson that you, Victor, want to kind of contribute. Oh, by the way, it's always fun to see constellations,
Yes.
Then I can just hit escape here. I can save state, and I can call it state workshop mission. And I usually use a convention like this. I start with state and then underscore and then the name of the mission. But this doesn't matter. You can name this anything you want. Now I'm going to hit save. And it will now save the state. I can close. I can end the mission. And then I need to go into my file system. And I can go into Reentry. And you can see, for example, if we now go into save states, Apollo, you can see that we have the state here. I can just copy this and then go into custom missions and then Apollo, and then I'm gonna paste this in here, copy the file name, and then I'm gonna load the mission. You don't need to actually load this mission, but why not? You can edit any mission from any mission. So the mission editor is completely independent of what mission you load it into. So if you're playing free play and you suddenly got an idea, you can create a quick draft of the mission and save it, and then just continue your mission. And then we all know that.
You need to copy and paste the RSG file into the mission directory to use it.
Yes, it needs to be relative to the mission.
That might be why it crashed for me then.
Okay, yeah, because you need to know where to find it, and it's all relative path, and it must not be a panel state. It needs to be a mission state.
Like
So-
save state.
Yes. So now I can just load the mission. It was workshop mission, and then hit load, and then I can go into the state, and then the file name was this, and then I can you can rename this to JSON if you want. That's completely fine. If you want to have proper formatting, you can just do that yourself. And then I'm going to hit the save again, and then I'm going to see if this works. Oops, not load state. Missions, Apollo, custom, workshop mission, launch. And of course, I do want every mission to have an image, and when you hit the custom mission folders, it will be much nicer drawn than just a tree view of your directory. But that's something that I can do later, as long as this works in the first place. Alright, now we're preparing the cockpit state. It's now loading the actual state file, and then it sets up a lot of things, and it's going to continue doing that now, as you all know, for a little while. You can see loading panel state, and it's already done. It's probably doing some things in the background. I usually like to wait until about half a minute or 45 seconds into the mission before doing critical things, but you can start interacting with stuff. Now, if I hit F1, you can see that I'm now in this twilight state, and the mission is now already in orbit. You can see the constellation. Sorry?
Those core things that I really need to know, thanks.
Yeah, so this is loading into a state. It's very simple, but what this logic does is that a state is saved usually in another mission. So the state does contain references to that mission, but once you load this using it as a state base for one mission, then it will kind of strip away all of that necessary information and then just apply it to the current mission instead. But what happens now, if you now hit escape and then save the state again, it will then of course be a state directly tied to this mission. It doesn't matter, but if you want to keep things neat or whatever, then you can save the state again and then use that state as your mission. Then it will be completely correctly stripped into all the necessary parts for this mission. But as I said, it doesn't matter. It's not using that mission, but it just depends on how you want your mission file to look like if someone wants to open the code for it. But as I said, it doesn't matter. Now you can see, let's complete this mission. Alright, flip switch to up. Alright, and then we see that run P1 on the AGC. You can see that the current objective always tries to check the condition of the mission and then tries to tell you what you should do in another way, just so you know that if you don't explain it well enough here, or if someone hits Roger and then, oh my god, I don't remember what I was doing because I was eating. You can always, of course, check the transcript, but then this current objective is showing you, the thing that you actually need to do to proceed with the mission.
Very
So
nice
now,
that you consider hungry people.
yeah, I'm always hungry, so just ask Thomas. Pro.
So let's say you're doing a mission, I don't know, Apollo, and you happen to hit, like, I don't know, mission control says do this, and you do it wrong by 5 seconds too late, 5 seconds too early, and you're in the wrong descent entry. Does the game actually tell you you're in the wrong state?
Could you repeat? So did you mean that you want the mission to tell you to get into set orientation, and if you're not in that orientation it won't proceed, or can you
let's say, I don't know, let's say we were re-entering the atmosphere and you're at the wrong angle. Would the game actually tell you you're at the wrong angle, or would you just go at the wrong angle?
I mean, if you implemented it.
Yeah, I can implement that, yes. It's not something... The game knows that you're in a wrong angle and you will most likely explode in internal logic, but of course I've disabled game overs for most of the cases, so you will survive. But the game knows that you're off wrong, and our aerodynamic forces are calculated based on it too. So it will not be good in terms of if you would put real people inside of the cockpit, but the game will allow you to, still survive for now. I plan on being able to toggle the game overs you want to enable or disable yourself at one point. But of course, it would be great if the mission could tell you that you're wrong. But it's very hard to do that in a sequential mission flow, because then you will design the mission so that you know that it will be wrong. But if you're wrong, then the way that you solve it is, for example, if I would provide you a condition saying that the attitude needs to be value 1, 2, and 3 in roll, pitch, and yaw, for example, the mission will proceed once you're in that attitude. And that's actually a pretty good idea. You can use roll, pitch, and yaw as a thing that you need to do to proceed with the mission.
And also all pitching your relative to something,
Yeah, and then just make sure... Yeah, exactly. And then you need to make sure that, if you're not doing that, if you're not doing what the mission tells you to do, well, you're fine to do whatever you want. This is an open world, but the mission won't proceed and you won't be able to complete the mission. That's how you get around it now. But of course, if I would get branching on missions, saying that, okay, if the player is in the wrong attitude, okay, let's drop the previous path, we're now in this path, and then you could add a completely different mission sequence based on that, and you can branch it as much as you want. That would be ideal, but it would also, of course, make mission creation very hard.
Well, I mean, you could set up a casual mode where people get away with it, or a realistic mode where you would die.
Yeah, exactly. So it's there's a lot of things that we can do, and we just need to, if you guys are making missions and you want your mission to have a certain condition, then ask me, and I will say yes, I can make that rather quickly. Usually I spend less than 10 minutes on creating a condition for the mission editor. I have all the data I need in most cases, and if I don't, I can get access to the data. And then in some cases it will take longer, but in most cases I do have the information I need. Then I can just say if this information equals value 1, then this happens. And then I can add this to the mission editor and create a card out of it, as well as an objective instruction. And then it becomes a tool that you guys can use. when you're creating the mission. Okay, so I know that this was quite involved. I've been trying to go into kind of the details, so I want to end off by doing this one thing. I'm going to load this, and then in the timeline I want to for this last condition I'm saying that I don't want the mission to, so this is the check on the AGC. Okay, remember, this is the hard thing, and this is where most people do it wrong. It's very easy to say that or think when you start creating your own missions that, okay, Roger, we see the data, run P1 on the AGC, and then the check is on this card. It's very easy to then get into a mode where you think that this check will trigger this message. No, this check, when this check is complete, this message will be triggered and be shown. And when this condition is complete, the next message is shown. So you always read it like this, down, 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 zigzag all the way down. It's not like if the AGC is running program 1, then this message will be displayed. One final thing I wanted to do, or actually two final things. First was general. I want to complete the mission if the player sets the AGC to program 1 and this condition is met. Then once you get into this message, it is displayed, it checks the condition, and the condition is very simple. It says complete the mission. Well, that's just a state condition, so it tells me or to the game that, hey, this player has now completed the mission, and that's it. Complete mission, done. But one more thing I would like to show is this applies more to Gemini and Mercury for now because of random failures, but I did add the failure system to Apollo in 0.75. If you saw my stream yesterday, I said that I did a lot of groundwork needed for 0.8. That's a lot of things, and I didn't touch upon many of those things, but for example, one of them is, I think it's in the command module spacecraft, or actually it's general maybe for now. Yes, trigger failure, and then I want to trigger failure battery 1, but every single card is tied to a message. So at this one, fail battery. In most cases, you don't want to tell the player that the battery has been failed. It should just happen at some point. Well, if you leave a message empty, the card and the condition must still be met to be able to proceed with the mission, but no message will be given to the player. And this is a method you can use to hide things that happens in the background. For example, main battery number 1 gets destroyed. This will then check here. AGC program 1 is running. Okay, done. Let's forget about this complete mission thing for now. And then once this condition is met, then program 1 message is being sent, meaning that, okay, it's running. Then it goes to the next message. There's no message, it's going to be hidden, but the condition is trigger failure, and the failure is main battery 1. Alright, let's kill it and move on to the next mission thing immediately. Or you follow this timing if you want to. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think that this covers most of the
that's about
basics.
All I really needed to know, and I think for lots of people as well.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but the only way to get better is like I'm not sure if you're doing sports or playing football or something, but you need to play a lot of football matches to become a good football player. And this is the same as creating games. You usually need to create a couple of games before you can make a good game, and you need to create a couple of missions to be able to get a good mission designer in Reentry, because you need to follow the rules and the constraints that I have and the things that I designed for you. But of course, I'm very open and available, so let me know if you need something.
You
I
gotta
will,
fly
thank you.
rockets several times to become an astronaut.
Now you can make some cool missions, and then for once, maybe I, as a developer, could get surprised in my own game. You know, that's one of the drawbacks of creating games, and I'm sure Thomas can all back me up on this. But when you create a game, you know everything. There's no surprises. You know the internals, all the mechanisms. That's why it's cool to see screenshots you are sharing on the channel. But also, once people are starting to create missions, and then I stumble upon a mission and I try it, then I get to actually play my own game without knowing what will happen. If you guys understand what I mean.
I get that.
Yeah, so it's that's something I look forward to.
Then
Yeah, and you never know how
that,
far people will
there
go
are
either.
more failures with
Yeah.
on the missions.
By the way,
Yeah.
I was thinking I could also quickly just show you the campaign thing. It's very easy. So before I end, I want to just do that. So I do think that I could just open the source here, campaign maker, and then I'm going to hit play. I think this executable is in your binary. If not, it's on GitHub under github.com/reentry-game. You can find all of this. So the campaign maker is actually a very simple tool, and it only leverages what you already made. So for example, if I now go in and I set a folder, for example, I set it to the new campaign, then I have these cards down here that kind of describes the general flow of the campaign. And what I can do now is that I can add new sections. I can add a header, I can add text, and I can add image, and I can hit add here. For example, I want to have more text on this. It's already having a lot of text. I can hit add, and it will then add a new text element in the bottom. If you select one of these things, then you can fill in the details of what this item should contain, and you have a header. If there's an image, you can just set the relative path to the image, and it will just draw it directly inside of this. You have missions, so you can see that there's a couple of missions involved here, and you can mix missions as well, saying that the first mission should be Mercury, and then the next two missions will be Gemini, and then maybe an Apollo mission, and stuff like that. So this is basically how you set up missions, mission campaigns. What you typically do is that you create a folder somewhere. It could be, it needs to be in the campaigns folder here. You can just create a new folder here, and then you can copy all the missions you want to have in this campaign into this folder, and just reference them. And you can, it could either be directly in the campaign folder that you created for this campaign, or you can create subfolders, which is, for example, named mission, and you will be able to just put it in there. So that's all fully possible. Let's see. It has a title, it has a tile background, and it has a page background. The tile background is on the campaign selector, and the page background is the background you can see here. So this is the tile, and this is the background, and this is the name. So if I now load this campaign in the campaigns section here, you can see this here. You can see that this is the tile, and you can design this yourself. And then you have the title, the background for this campaign, and all of the cars that you decided to add. And then the missions will be added in the bottom here, and the missions automatically, you can put text for every mission you want. And then if you hit the mission itself, it will then basically just load the description of the mission that you made. So you can add a lot of story into this if you want to, and then hit launch. So if you, for example, want to create a campaign that covers 3 Mercury missions, you can do so using you can create the 3 Mercury missions using the Mercury mission editor in-game, and then just save the missions, make them work as you want, and then put them together as a campaign using this campaign descriptor file. Cool. And I think that's it.
Yes. In a minute, can you stay in voice channel for like a minute or so? I have a weird bug.
Yes. Let's cover it. Let's go to Discord.
Stay in voice like a minute or so. I have a weird bug. stream in a minute. Hold on, I'm testing one more thing to see if it has to do with the editor itself.
Yep. All right. But with that, I want to thank everyone who did watch this stream. Please reach out if there's anything, and we'll be creating more workshops by request. This was kind of ad hoc. Thank you who did watch. Sorry, I didn't catch the last question. All right, just reach out with it and I'll try to answer. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.